Hello lovely people, welcome back to another book chat. Okay, so third installment of what I read this month. So this is what I read in August, kind of. There were a few did not finishes, which I won't even talk about here. But for the rest, I've actually managed to sort of remember everything that I read, which I'm very happy with. I read a lot of craft books this month. So one of them in particular I'm going to actually talk about in a different video, probably a blog post actually that I'll probably put up next week, because it sort of brought up lots of different thoughts and ideas, and that's more for the writers among us, which obviously if you are a writer then you might be interested in that one. So right, I shall show you that one first then and get it out of the way. Becoming a Writer, the Classic Inspirational Guide. I picked this up because it was actually recommended by Ray Bradbury in his Zen and the Art of Writing. And if you haven't heard me gush over Ray Bradbury, then yes, favourite book on writing ever. He's so full of enthusiasm and just passion for writing that it's really infectious and it's absolutely beautiful. So, I do believe this was first published in 1934. So it's full of these wonderful little references to, carrying your portable typewriter around with you, which is just awesome. And I now want a portable typewriter. And also things like this, which I do love. Turn your attention to your daily regime. Most writers flourish greatly on a simple, healthy routine with occasional time off for gaiety. It's wonderful. I will talk a bit more about some of the things which were very timeless, which came up, and I'll talk about that in next week's blog post. So, very good. The other craft book I've been working on is there's a Craig Martell one, which is an indie publishing one, and also this, which I'm trying to open it. It's the Smarter Artist Locker, and obviously I haven't got the cover up because I'm not organised. I've forgotten how to do this after not doing it for a month. The Smarter Artist Locker. Okay, so that's by Sean Platt and Johnny B. Truant. And it's really, really interesting. Very much treating writing as a business. But the actual craft of writing, the very, the stuff when you really get down, you get into the story, that is still very much, they still call that an art, very much so, which is lovely. And I'm trying to find a quote that I highlighted here, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that mix of an approach. Once it's on the paper, start treating it like a business. When it's in your head, it's really still an art, and it's a bit odd and weird, and you're all going to have quirks with it. And this is lovely. Your task is merely to begin in the beginning. And in spite of doubts, once you've begun, your task is to continue. You might not know all the answers and will likely feel lost, but that's no reason not to start. And that for me is very much what writing feels like. I have no idea where I'm going when I start. So that was really good. The Smartest Artist Locker is a bundle of a bunch of their books. The Write, Publish, Repeat, which is what that quote was from, I really enjoyed and found really, really interesting. I'm only through another couple of the others, and they haven't really stuck with me as much. One of them was the storytelling lessons from Friends, and because I did see the first couple of seasons of Friends, but I really haven't seen it since then. It was sort of a bit, yeah. So that one wasn't as interesting for me. But Write, Publish, Repeat, if you're an indie author, I definitely recommend. This next one, and this you can actually pick up for free on Amaret Anderson's Facebook page. It's her introduction to her cozy mystery series with witches and a talking cat. So, of course, the talking cat sold me instantly. Much more sort of cozy mystery with a lot of large romance element. And it was a fun read, really quick and easy, nice sort of beach read, I guess you'd call it. Okay, so jumping from a beach read to something completely different, Susan Hill, Farthing House and Other Tales. Now, oddly enough, I've never read Susan Hill before. I love the movie The Woman in Black. I'm very embarrassed to admit that I saw that before I read any of hers. But I picked this up the other day in town, and she is a beautiful writer. Really powerful stories. The first one in this, Keelties, just completely captured me. There's nothing particularly dark happening in it. There's nothing awful. It's just a child's misunderstanding, but it's so beautifully done, and you're so much in his shoes that it captures you entirely. So this was a really, really interesting collection, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll be looking out for more of hers. Okay, Belfast Confidential. Celebrity Scandal and a Very Big Mouse. I have read one of Bateman's. I actually can't remember what his first name is. That's terrible. But I have read one of his books before, and it is they're set in Ireland. There is a nice thread of very dark humour running through them, but essentially they're crime stories, but really, really well done. So I enjoyed this. It's another one of those ones where the protagonist is really unlikable. I mean, he sort of keeps getting beaten up, and you're sort of like, well, I understand why. Yes, I would probably want to beat you up too if I knew you. But at the same time, you're rooting for him. You want him to discover who murdered his best friend, and you want him to survive. And even though, yes, he kind of needs a good shake quite a lot of the time. So yeah, good. The mystery was well done. You kind of twigged to who it was fairly early on, but it was still very well done in the sense of political intrigue and the corruption. Everything else was obviously very good. So yes, enjoyed that. So it's terrible. I'll go check his first name. I'm sure I knew it. Colin Bateman. I did know that. I remember it from the first book. It's just not on the front of this one. Embarrassing. That's terrible. Okay, and then I also revisited an old favourite. So, Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. I haven't read this since I was probably in my teens or early 20s when I sort of read all of them, loved them, thought they were great fun, and just never kind of went back to them for one reason or another. So, not entirely sure why I decided to revisit it all of a sudden, but I'm so glad I did. He's a lovely writer. He really, really is. And there's such, similar to Terry Pratchett in a way, there's a lot of philosophy running underneath the absolute just slapstick comedy over it. And there's also just some really beautiful passages. Like, I love this. Ford beckoned to Prosser, who sadly, awkwardly, sat down in the mud. He felt that his whole life was some kind of dream, and he sometimes wondered whose it was and whether they were enjoying it. The mud folded itself round his bottom and his arms and oozed into his shoes even. Ford looked at him severely. "And no sneaky knocking Mr. Dent's house down while he's away, all right?" he said. "The mere thought," growled Mr. Prosser, "hadn't even begun to speculate," he continued, settling himself back, "about the merest possibility of crossing my mind." And it's just, the whole thing is just beautifully done. If you haven't read Douglas Adams before, do read him because you're missing a treat. If you have read him before but it's been a while, go back and read him again because he really is fantastic. I'm sort of slowly starting to reread through everything because I did reread Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency a few months ago, and that was also lovely to revisit, and I got so much more out of it as an adult than I did when I was a kid. I understood it so much better. So that is also, I think that's one of the most lovely things about rereading, is discovering things that you missed the first time, because as readers we do come to books with different things, and I can read a book one year, put it down and just go, I can't finish this, I don't even want to read this, but then I'll come back to it a year later and read it and love it. And so much of one of the beautiful things about reading, I think, is that it's this kind of relationship between the writer and the writer and the reader, or the reader and the book. So every time we come to it, depending on where we are in our lives and what we're carrying with us, we read a different book. And there's something really magical about that. And I'd kind of forgot it because I haven't been doing rereading for a long time. But I'm starting to go back to those favourites of Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman and Douglas Adams now, and it's a lovely thing to do. So yes, if you haven't got back into your rereading, go for it. So that is my pile for the month. Lots of craft books, which I'm not going to talk about a lot here, except for that lovely quote which I really liked from Write, Publish, Repeat. Fiction ones. Don't forget, if you're looking for a cozy mystery, oh no, that's not fiction, but don't forget, if you're looking for a cozy mystery that's, fun, light beach reading, and you can pick it up for free and it starts the whole series off, go to Anne-Marie Anderson's Facebook page, and I'll put a link for it below in the blog post. And yes, if you are interested in some of the craft books I have been reading, I will do a blog post on becoming a writer next week because there's lots of lovely things in there, and I think not just for writers but for creatives in general. Which is something I'm thinking about a lot at the moment, is what it is to sort of be creative, because it's kind of messy at times. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. I would love to know if you have read any of those books, what your thoughts are on rereading and coming back to books at a different stage, and what you've been reading in August. So let me know below, and I shall see you next time. Thanks so much for listening.